Right, fellas, it's time for another Q&A, so I'll just jump straight into it. Royd Quaid, I reckon that's how you say your name. Greetings, Ivan. I'm wondering, for a while now, in your last Q&A, you talked about not using a belt because you didn't want to augment your natural capability, and similarly with shoes. I feel very much the same. However, I always see you go for the straps after you hit upwards of 160 kilos or so on deadlift. What in particular is it about the straps that changes your otherwise pretty consistent mindset, avoiding augmented lifts? I've used straps before, but I always felt that they took something away from my ability to grip without, so I tried to use them only as a last resort. What is your opinion on this? So the reason why I use straps, a few reasons, but mostly because, well, so first thing is I don't like the alternate grip. The alternate grip is, in my opinion, bad for the spine because one over, one under, there's like a uneven force distribution through the hands, therefore your shoulders and your spine, and there's like a helicoptering effect. When I first started deadlifting, I used that and I always kind of felt weird. I tried to alternate, one rep like this, the other rep like this, but it just never felt quite the same. And then kind of soon after, I kind of learned about bicep tearing. That kind of scared me even more, and that led me to start doing hook grip. I did hook grip for a whole bunch of time, even before I started the YouTube channel and all that, and I got up to 220 kilos with a hook. And then I gave that up as well, ultimately because it was just too tough on my skin. And my skin would often kind of be smashed around the thumb, and being a nurse, putting alcohol gel, washing my hands all the time, working with, you can imagine all the things that we kind of work with. I can't have skin that's broken. I need my skin intact, basically. And so infection control, all that stuff, and it makes it awfully difficult to, wash your hands, to put alcohol gel on your hands when you've got a cut on your hand and things of that nature. So the only reason I use the straps is because I want to have double overhand grip, and I don't want to use the straps. Don't want to use the hook grip. That's basically it. In the kind of ideal world, I would always use hook grip, but there's only so much skin you can kind of afford, and depending on the barbell. So basically, the barbell here that you guys see, that's a Rogue Ohio power bar, and basically, the day I stopped doing hook grip is the day I got this thing. It's way too aggressive. It would just beat the shit out of my hands. And I just thought, man, this is not, it's impossible to kind of do this with high frequency. And this is where the straps come in. It's a compromise that I have to, because otherwise I wouldn't be deadlifting at all if it wasn't for the straps. Whereas with the shoes and the belt and the sleeves and all that, that's not necessarily necessary, if that makes sense. So that's kind of my stance on that. The bar that I had before this was a cheapo bar, kind of beater bar, if you will, and I dropped it a few times on the pins doing squats and had a bit of like a bend to it, and it was a very smooth bar. And so bars with a bend, you can kind of just, before you start lifting, you kind of get the belly up of that bend, and it wouldn't roll. That bar never rolled, and so I was just smashing the hell out of it with hook grip, and it felt good until I got this bar, which is ultra stiff, ultra straight, and likes to roll. And so the moment the ball starts rolling, you can't hold on to a double overhand, so you need to do hook grip. Basically, that's what that's the kind of summary to all of this. If I was to compete, obviously I would use hook grip. I wouldn't use over under because of the reasons I kind of explained: the helicoptering, the uneven forces, and the risk of bicep tears. Although the bicep tears is mostly seen in people that are on PEDs. Their strength shoots up way faster than the ligaments and tendons are able to shoot up, and so there's this discrepancy between the two types of tissue, the muscle and the tendon, and then eventually discrepancy is too much, and then you get the popping of the tendons. So that's kind of where I stand with this. Farts are funny says, maybe I can answer this for you. Using straps helps limit fatigue on muscles such as buys and forearms. I imagine this is the reasoning, or he's just a really weak grip. Yeah. The grip, like there was a phase that I cared about grip, and I bought those Captain of Crush grippers. I don't know if you guys can see them, they're there. So I got the trainers and I got the ones, and I used to kind of, I remember taking them to work a few times and getting the fellas and the girls at work to try and have a go. Mind you, only one person was able to close the one, and that was a ward clerk, 50-year-old ward clerk who never trained or didn't train for a long time, played footy as a younger lad. But even the guys who kind of trained a little bit, they didn't have the grip strength to do it. So there was a time I cared about it, but I've kind of, my priorities shift, like as, everyone's priorities kind of shift. So I don't really care too much about it. But if I was going to compete, I would just, have like six weeks of practicing hook grip and I'll be all right again. Adam G says, hi Van, I started watching your videos around day 400 and subscribed and started watching your videos religiously from around day 500. And I haven't once seen you on like a vacation trip in the year and a half of training I've been doing. It's always the vacation and traveling that messes up my training schedule and diet the most. I was wondering how you tackle it. Extra small, non-training related question, but it got me curious. Where do Aussies usually travel on vacation if they travel abroad? So I guess Australia's massive, man. It's a big continent, right? It's huge. So a lot of people don't travel overseas because there's so much to see on this continent. There's so many different things to see. There's like a bit of a saying here that, before you go overseas, check out your backyard kind of thing. But when people do go overseas, it's usually Southeast Asia, Bali, Thailand, that kind of stuff. Very cheap flights, back to get there. So that's kind of like most frequent, cheapest kind of vacation trip that people make. I haven't been to Thailand or Bali. Why haven't I been on a vacation? So basically, man, like the last 5 years have been crazy. In the last 5 years, man. So we've had 2 kids in the last 5 years. We've bought 2 houses. So bought one, sold one, bought another. Actually 3. So 3 houses. Reasons are many. Not the smartest thing to do financially to buy and sell a house a year apart. But we did that. We bounced around a little bit. Finally found a place that we liked, location we liked, with primary schools and schools around the place. So we kind of settled. So each time we moved in, it's renovations, painting, floors, all that kind of stuff. So, and then also the kids, man. When you have a 3 and a 1-year-old, it's very difficult to travel. But we've done, we do things, but we don't go on vacation per se. It's always kind of like a day thing that we go check things out. And then obviously Corona. Corona had us screwed over for about 2.5 years now. How long has it been? 2.5 years. So it's a crazy period. But those of you that have kids, you will understand it's kind of hard to travel overseas and do all that kind of stuff. But the training never was a factor to me. It was never a factor. If we wanted to travel, we would have traveled. I've always said you can do bodyweight squats, you can do push-ups. I mean, the stuff I'm doing right now is basically mostly without the barbell. So the training has never been a thing for me. Like you guys know, I'm approaching 1,000 days in a row, but it doesn't really mean anything to me, man. Like it's a cool number, whatever. But to me, it's the journey. It's not the destination. It's not a sprint or some arbitrary number. So it never really, played an impact. Oh no, I can't travel because I'm a professional athlete. I'm doing this. Nah, nothing like that. How do you deal with it? Well, dude, you can always do stuff, man. Like, I don't care where you are, who you are. Man, I've seen LeBron James, travel and do things. So you can do push-ups, you can do sit-ups, you can do lunges, you can do bodyweight squats, you can do whatever you want to do, you can do it. When you go on vacation, it doesn't have to be you don't do anything, right? That's my opinion anyway. Actually, so we did go away probably when my boy was around 2 years old. So my wife was pregnant with our second. We went away probably 5 hours south of Adelaide to a place called Robe. We went down there, rented out a joint, and we stayed there for about 3 days, I think it was. And what did I do? I did a whole bunch of push-ups. Now, I was in a push-up thing craze at that point. This is kind of when I was doing Grease to Groove, I reckon it was. I reckon that was around 3 years ago or something like that, 2 years ago, something like that. But yeah, it's cool to kind of work out in different spots. All right, that's Adam G. Yep. Next one is Reed C. Ivan, can you think of an exercise that is equivalent to the hyper with minimal loading and high volume capacity for the opposite the posterior chain. So I'm guessing anterior chain, equivalent to a hyper. Sit-ups, that's what I would do. Hanging leg raises is probably the best. It kind of has the same type of back benefits as a hyper. Like it's almost like a traction exercise, right? So I'll probably say that to be probably the best exercise I can think of. And then Phoenix Fitz says hanging leg raise is also the opposite of posterior, is anterior. The next question is Destroyer of Toilets. That's a cool name. Ivan, now that you're approaching the 1,000 day milestone, can you share what life lessons you have learned from the barbell on your journey? What have been the biggest challenges you faced, and what are the biggest breakthroughs you've made? Man, that is a big question, man. That is a very loaded question. I could make an hour, 2-hour video on that, and I could break it down into so many different things. The breakthroughs are many. In my journal, my diary there, I've circled, asterisked, all these points. In fact, what I do every year is I actually make a summary. I do like a little bit of a write-up and a summary every year of training, and I write some of the biggest moments that I've kind of gone through. So there've been many. I mean, it's pushing 3 years now, man. What have I learned about myself is that I'm strong mentally. I think I never realized that until I started doing this and realized that I am, mentally, when I put my mind onto something, when my heart wants something, it's gonna happen. So that's something that I've learned. I never thought I would be able to do something so consistently for such a long time. That's probably the most standout feature that I've kind of learned about myself in this journey. And also, I learned, and I continue to learn, that I love this stuff, man. I think I've, in the last 3 years, found my niche in life, found what makes me tick, what makes me happy. Not that I didn't know that before, but it was more kind of emphasized during the last almost 1,000 days. I would say that in a nutshell, but that is something that it's worthy of a long video because it's huge. The journey has been such a long journey. AP, the legend, asks, good day, Ivan. You considered gunning for a 250 back squat soon? Yeah, man. Any day I would love to do a 215. There's not a single day that I don't think about doing more weight. But the way I am, the way I approach training and how I think about training, it's always on the day. So if I feel good on the day, if I have a nice stretch of training and then it leads to something really good, then I go. So I don't have a preconceived idea what I'm going to do any day. So all these PRs that I said, it's on days that I feel good. And as we all know, we don't feel good once a week or twice a week or whatever. Those special moments come around almost rarely. So a lot of you guys do 12-week programs, and then on the kind of last day of the 12th week, you set a PR. I don't have a set program as such, but the frequency of my PR is probably the same as the people that are programming, essentially. I'd love to do a PR soon. Monkey Dog 1 says, hey Van, I'm a uni student doing a lot of sports, so I need to auto-regulate my sessions in the gym, but I find that often I read the wrong signals from my body. I know that a lot of this comes with experience, but do you have any tips or things you look out for in terms of auto-regulation? Did it take you a while to sort things out? Yes, it is an experience thing, man. It's one of those things that you just learn as you go along. Automatically I'm thinking about sports as like basketball. When you run the same play with your team, you call the same play, say it's horns, and you run it over and over again, and you see different coverages for horns, and you start to kind of read the play ahead of the play unfolding. So if somebody starts to hedge on the screen, you know that the dive is open. So these kinds of things, you can't study that on a piece of paper. You need to actually apply it and run horns with your team with the same kind of plays over and over and over again, and then you kind of start to read plays. Same type of deal with that, man. You know, once you put the bar on your back 1,000 days in a row, you learn something. You know, it's just repetition. Oh, this feels similar to this, or this kind of feels weird, or whatever. So just keep at it, and just be honest with yourself. The signals will become more clearer and clearer. This is something that's consistent even in just general health, man. Like, a lot of people feel certain pains and they can't associate with what they've done in life, you know. This is where, you know, not all pain is created equal. Like, so when I work out and I feel pain in my body, I'm always thinking to myself, is that a positive pain or a negative pain? That is a very, very important distinction to make. I can't verbalize that. I can't teach you that. Maybe this is why coaching is such a necessity in this world. Somebody that's been in the game for 30 years is always going to have better, you know, auto regulation or better ability to assess certain situations than somebody that's in the first year. So, you know, I've been in sports for a while now. You know, ever since I was 10 years old, I took sports seriously. So I've kind of developed this relationship with my body. So just keep at it, man. There's not really I can give you any tricks and tips other than be honest with yourself and try and leave the ego at the door. Who's next? We've got James V3 says, what's up, Ivan? Have you considered lifting in barefoot or minimalistic footwear while lifting? Absolutely, man. That's the next thing for me, James, man. What are they called? Vivo bare footwear or bare Vivo or something like that. I always forget the damn name. There's actually a shop not far away from the gym that sells them. So these Chuck Taylors that I have right now are literally falling apart, man. Like, so, you know, there's a hole at the bottom as well. So I'm going to get rid of them soon. And I reckon that is the next place I'm going to get. Something that's super, super minimalistic. That is what excites me about footwear. It's exactly opposite to, I keep thinking that it's here, but it's actually in the house. The Romoleo 2s that I have, it's like, the shoe is so freaking uncomfortable, man. It's literally like wearing a concrete block. You know, that's something that I don't enjoy. I don't want to turn off all of my muscles in my foot. It's kind of like, I remember back in the day when we played basketball. When I played basketball for a team, the coach got concerned about the frequency and the prevalence of the ankle rolls, ankle injuries that we had in the team. So he made a blanket rule for all of us to wear ankle braces bilaterally on both ankles. So a lot of us wore ankle braces during games, and a lot of us were actually rolling our ankles during like just mundane things that we would do, like running around. One guy rolled his ankle just going for a run, obviously without the ankle braces, because the idea of an ankle brace, the idea of any sort of brace, whether it be a belt or whatever, is that it is reinforcing that particular joint or area. And when you reinforce the particular area of the joint, you are inactivating or deactivating the inherent tissue that is there to do the job that this external thing is now doing. So if you wrap your ankle with a really tight brace, and I used to wear some freaking chunky old things, the foot is basically inactive because there's an external thing doing the job. But when you're always running on sand and you're running around with no supports, the muscles, the nerves, all of that learns to kind of behave when you land and fall. Each step you do, you know, your body's kind of like coordinating and you know, hypertrophying those muscles associated with those stabilizations. You can't isolate these muscles, man. You can't isolate these fine strands of muscles that articulate your ankle, you know. So this is where, I mean, my beliefs go deeper than just, oh, I don't want to wear a belt because blah, blah, blah. It's because of this idea. I used to wear ankle braces, used to freaking roll my ankles all the time. The moment I went away from ankle braces and we started running on the beach, on sand, all of a sudden the prevalence of ankle injuries disappeared, man. All of a sudden we are tough. Like if you step on somebody's foot, it's like stepping on a rock in the beach. You know, it's not the first time. You know, you have, I don't know what it is, proprioception. You have these muscles and ligaments already trained to do that. That's why I would love minimalistic shoes. The Ophanes asks, hey Ivan, question from a runner lifter. I hear a lot of conflicting advice on the effects running has on lifting. Have you ever incorporated running into your training? And if so, what was your experience with it? And what are your thoughts on the relationship between running and building strength? Man, it depends on what type of running. If you're into like marathons and half marathons, you know, if you look at the elite people who do that, they're very thin, very, let's say, muscularly small people, because it's a purely endurance endeavor. But if you look at people like in the NFL, like, you know, if you look at rugby players, they run a lot, you know, but they're jacked. So it depends on what sort of running you're doing. You can't have how should I say? You can't have a semi-trailer beat an F1 car around the track. But you can't have a F1 car pull a trailer. So it depends on what type of body you're trying to build for the job that you're trying to do. So if you're trying to race a semi-trailer around the track, you can make it, you can, you know, shed some weight off that thing, put some different tires or whatever else you can do to that truck, but it's never going to be an F1 car. So there is specificity, there is specialization. If you want to combo two things, which are maybe on the opposite poles, you can find some sort of compromise and be a hybrid athlete, but you need to understand that you're never going to be better than somebody that is specializing solely in one wing. I grew up only running, man. Like, I was always skinny, probably largely because of I played soccer and basketball a lot. So I was always a skinny guy, and when we played basketball, I was one of the fittest, quickest, whatever. And when I gave that up, I was yearning for some mass, for some muscular size. That's kind of what kind of led me into the gym in the first place. But if you're combining, like if you're into sprinting, match made in heaven, man. Like, I don't know if you know Ben Johnson, whatever his name was, the Canadian guy who broke the 100-meter sprint at the Olympics, 1998 or something like that, or 1990s or something like that, a while back. You know, he popularized the whole squatting heavy. He was even like quarter squatting, like box squatting at that time. And so he kind of started this huge trend of, you know, sprinters doing a lot of lifting, you know, a lot of heavy back squatting. So if you're a power athlete or a sprinter, 200, maybe even a 400, you would kind of mix better than if you're a marathon runner. I'm not an expert at this, but that's kind of my opinion and how I think about these things. It depends what sort of running you do. But even if you're a marathon runner, I think training with weights is going to make you a more efficient runner. You might not put size on, but developing strength is never a weakness. You know, like Mark Bell always used to say, if you're stronger, you're going to be better, especially if you maintain the same body weight. We got Mike 405. Hi, Ivan. I have 3 questions. 1, have you used isometric exercises at the beginning of your warm-ups? Other than planks, I haven't really done many of those type of exercises. 2, do you feel like you get more out of one set of 50 than a set of 40, 30, 20, and 10? I'm not sure if we're comparing apples and apples here, because the volume with 40, 30, 20, and 10, then a set of 40. So if you're talking about doing all the 40s and 30s and 20s and 10s in one, it's a lot more volume. So it's probably going to be more beneficial to you do, you know, what is that? 50, 90, 100 freaking reps versus 50. I'm thinking about breathing squats in particular. So the magic in breathing squats, I think, is just being under the weight. It's just literally breathing. I think that's the benefit of it. When you're under that weight for such a long time, it does something to you, man. It's you know, that weight never intimidates you ever again, because you had it on your back for 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it ends up being. So I think breathing squats are special. Let's say, you know, if I ask a question for you, so is 5 sets of 10 the same as one set of 50? I would say the set of 50 is a lot better, even if you are using weights which are much heavier for the 5 sets of 10, purely because of the breathing aspect. The breathing aspect is something that I can't explain, and I've felt the effects of that many times over. It's special. It's very, very special. Now it started to rain, so I don't know if you guys are going to hear this all that well, but I'll continue on. Have you considered breaking up the hyper into 2 movements? One movement targeting the glutes, torso parallel to the ground, then contract the glutes, and the other movement targeting the erectors, torso as far down as possible and rounding your upper back, and then contracting back until parallel to the ground. By breaking up the hyper into 2 movements, you'd get the momentum you don't get the momentum from the bottom half into too high. I guess, you know, if you're, you know, thinking about purely hypertrophy and like isolating different muscles in a given movement, that makes sense. But as much as possible, I try to think about movement. I try to think about training movement patterns rather than muscles. That's kind of how that's what I think the biggest difference between like somebody interested in aesthetics versus someone interested in performance. Aesthetic athletes or bodybuilders, people of that kind of nature, they are thinking about sculpting, you know, a figurine. So they need to isolate certain parts, they need to get different paints and paint certain aspects to bring certain aspects out and have this kind of balanced idea of what a attractive physique looks like. For me, I'm like, I want to be better at hip flexion, and I want to be better at hip extension, and I want to be able to do better knee flexion and extension as well. That's how I think about it. So when I'm doing these, you know, hypers, back extensions, when I'm doing that stuff, I'm literally thinking, I want to be better at hip extension, whatever that entails. Erectors, hamstrings, glutes, adductors, don't care. I just want to be better at that. That's kind of how I think about it. That's why I maybe never thought about breaking that movement up into smaller pieces, because I don't necessarily care what's happening, you know, at the final level. I just want to get better in that movement pattern, if that makes sense. Mike. Oh, and then we have Casper14. Hey, Ivan, love the videos. Appreciate it, man. How would you go about telling an 80-year-old lifter to stop telling you the same life stories and lifting numbers when he was my age for the 5th time? How would you go about telling an 80-year-old lifter to stop telling you the same life stories and lifting numbers when he was my age? I work in nursing, man, as a lot of you guys know. I have an affinity to old people. I think old people are cool. You know, if they have their own bearings with them and they're not demented, if they don't have Alzheimer's or they're cognitively impaired in some way, it is very, very beneficial for us to speak to these people, to our elders. You know, an 80-year-old person, man, like this person would have been born in the 40s, right? Just sitting there and absorbing some of the stories, even though, yes, repetition is a big thing, I find it very, very valuable, because I mean, I don't think we as a society appreciate old people enough. They're not cool. I don't know why they're not cool, because I just spoke about experience or auto regulation. These guys have been around the block more than anybody. 80-year-old man. My late father-in-law, he used to say the same old stories over and over and over again. But these stories have now been covered from like 50 different angles. And I feel like, when I think about some of these stories, I feel like I was there. Like, because each time he would tell it with a slightly different kind of set of words and maybe slightly different perspective. And like some of these stories are ingrained into my mind. And so that just comes part of it. Like the repetition is there. And you just kind of laugh and kind of listen to it again. But cherish those moments as much as possible, man. It's hard for us youngsters, you know, to sit there listening to the same old thing, especially the TikTok generation. I mean, TikTok is literal poison to society. It is the antithesis of an 80-year-old man telling a story. For 25 minutes, he's telling me something that can be covered in 5 seconds on TikTok. But the love, the affection, the detail, the feeling is lost in TikTok. And TikTok just completely destroys our ability to concentrate and to really extract the deep and meaningful, the true essence of stories. So just listen to him. Yes, maybe he squatted 5 tons at some point in his life. Just listen to the story. Yes, so many times I remember when we played basketball, people would come up to me, you know, in the family, oh, you know, Van, when I was your age, I was able to dunk. Why can't you dunk? And all that kind of stuff. It's like, I'm pretty sure you didn't dunk, but all right. let's tell me some stories about what you did. So I still enjoy it, even though the repetition is crazy. The commands guy writes, yo, Ivan, are you planning on having a collaboration on YouTube channel? It would be neat to see you and someone like Clarence Kennedy discuss Olympic weightlifting and squatting. That would be awesome, man. If I was to reach out to Clarence Kennedy, if he were to approach me. I mean, right now all the podcasts that I've done, and I've done a handful of them, have always been people coming knocking on my door. I haven't really sought out anybody. I haven't sought out anything. This is probably why you guys see me not have a lot of people on the channel or sponsors or anything, because I basically mind my own business, and that's kind of what I do. But the people that I've spoken to, they've been a blessing. So the right people have kind of knocked on my door, and I've been happy with, like Seeker Strength, Pete Rubish. Last night I spoke to Ben McIntyre. So really cool, you know, to speak to these people. The trouble with what I do with the Squat Everyday business and the videos is that I'm so freaking busy making just my baseline content. I'm so busy. You know, if I was to make content maybe once a week, I would have opportunity to kind of explore some of these ideas. But because I'm so busy training, you know, working and doing everything in my life that I do, I don't have a lot of time to kind of look at some of these other angles. But it will be cool one day. You know, hopefully I can get to a position one day where I can do things like this. But for the moment, I'm still enjoying Squat Every Day. So it's, you know, that's kind of what's taking most of my time. So that wraps up this Q&A. 31 minutes, not too bad. A lot shorter than last time. But keep them coming. You know, keep coming those questions. The Discord thing is working out really well. Loving the form videos and the discussions. Get on there as much as I can. But yeah, just keep on asking these questions, and I'm happy to make these, you know, videos. They don't take a lot of time. It's basically no editing involved at all. So it's really cool. So hopefully, I mean, last time I tried to upload this thing the night I did it, and for some reason, man, the internet crapped itself or whatever. It didn't manage it. So hopefully tonight I upload this and it works for some reason. It didn't work last time. It took me like a day freaking uploading to get it up. Anyway, guys, I'll catch you guys in the next one.